The Media Center for Art Education and Technology, a service of the Monterey County Office of Education, along with the Herald Live, presents Prep Nation. Now to your hosts, Dave Kellogg and John Devine.
Welcome to Prep Nation. I'm Dave Kellogg alongside John Devine. It's CCS football playoff time, and let's see, how many teams do we have advancing? Eight teams. We have 8 games this weekend, starting with Division I, Alvarez getting the top seed after wrapping up an undefeated season. How about them Eagles?
Well, the Eagles' nest has landed, I guess you could say, over there at Alvarez. You know, this has been just a magical season for this team. And I think I shouldn't say everybody, I think a lot of people have been waiting for the bubble to burst, so to say.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
Right.
They completed a regular season 10-0. It's funny because everybody said, well, who'd they play? But you know, they've had 5 come-from-behind wins in the second half this year, and 4 of those teams are in the playoffs. So they played somebody.
Yeah, well, they finished off with Monterey, that finished second in that upper division, and came away with an 18-14 victory.
Yeah, and that was an important game for both teams, but even for Monterey, because Monterey had Monterey won that game, they'd be hosting Menlo this week instead of going up to Sequoia High in Redwood City.
Now, Alvarez will host, as you said, and they'll get Monta Vista of Cupertino. What's the mood at the campus right now? You think excited?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, you know, I had spoken to head coach David Bottom earlier in the week after they got seeded, and he said, you know, the one thing I wanted to do this year was create a positive atmosphere, not only for the program, but for the campus. You know, just get that morale changed a little bit. And I think the football club's done that.
All righty. Well, let's hear more from Coach David Bottom.
All right, David, it's our 3rd time out here, and it's mid-November, so I guess something good's happening out here.
Yeah, we've had a pretty magical season. It's definitely, I wouldn't say expected, but it was a surprise. We're having fun, and it's just every week's just rolling on, and just new things are happening, and it's been a lot of fun.
But you told me before the season started that the goal was to make the playoffs this year, and you weren't kidding because this team started 0-10 last year.
We had a rough year, and yes, the goal was to make playoffs and to try to compete for our league title. These guys are athletic. They work hard. This group of juniors and seniors have done well, and they've worked well as a group. And you guys saw us during the summer. You saw how hard we were working. So, I mean, you have to set your bar high so you know what to strive for. And these guys have met every goal that we've set for them.
David, the last time I was out here was about 4 weeks ago. We were talking about title aspirations. It was a Christopher game, a battle of unbeatens at the time. Now, is it fair to talk CCS title right now? Is that too much pressure put on these kids?
I think we're going to handle it the same way we did last time we talked, where we weren't talking about North High, we weren't talking about Gilroy, we talked about Christopher, and just the matchups that we had with Christopher that week. And we've pretty much handled practice every week that way. The kids, when they watch film, we have film on for future opponents, but we watch 1 week at a time, and we focus on that one group. So as exciting as that sounds, right now we're just trying to get through the first round.
You know, what's impressed me about this team this year is comebacks. You've had 5 comebacks in the second half. We've rallied to win games. 4 of those teams are in the playoffs. So this schedule's not as soft as some people might suggest.
Well, I think when you look at all the teams in this area, everybody knows each other. So the competition's always there. So when we play everybody, our league, these kids all know each other. They see each other on the weekends. So every game is a big game to these guys. So I don't think you can ever say anybody's schedule is soft because everybody can beat anybody.
Right, yeah. No, I agree. You know, you told me that you kind of wanted to change the atmosphere, not only the football program, but around school a little bit. I'm going to guess 10-0 helps build that morale a little bit around campus anyway. I mean, it sounds like there's been some great crowds out here.
I've probably met more people in the past 2 weeks that are alumni of the school than I did in the past year and a half.
Wow.
Last week I know we had 8 or 9 people on the sidelines wearing their old Letterman jackets and jerseys. So I've definitely seen a lot of the alumni and definitely a lot of the faculty support. People are already offering to come help work for our Friday night game. So it's definitely a lot of energy, and it's fun to watch. And as you guys have seen by the crowds, our stadium's full each game.
Well, and it has been 13 years since this team has had a winning season or made the playoffs, let alone win a league title, so there's something special going on here. Watching film of Monta Vista Cupertino, what do you see that concerns you? What impresses you about them? I know they got a pretty good running back.
I would say they're a lot like the team we just played, Monterey.
Really?
They have a great running back. I think his name's Cena. He's a short guy, but he's strong. He runs a lot like the Gilroy guy did. He's fast. He has a lot of long runs. 2 or 3 games in league, he had over 300 yards. Their quarterback is 6'5", 210. He's a big guy too. So between the two of them, they run stuff very similar to Monterey. So if we can come out and play like we did against Monterey, I think we'll be okay.
So you had a little pop quiz last week.
Yeah, I would say that was definitely a tone setter, but it's a physical game to make through. I just kind of hope that we could bounce back and didn't spend too much energy on that game. So.
Sure. Hey, before we get out of here, you got a school record for wins. You got your first league title outright. Probably on your way to the Gavilan Division next year. You've set the bar pretty high here.
We have, and I just hope that we can keep pushing these kids to keep meeting that bar every year. Next year, I'm pretty positive we're going to be in that upper league, so we definitely have our work cut out for us.
Well, let's make this go another 2 weeks.
That would be great.
All right, David, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so John, Alvarez runs into a powerful running game against Monta Vista. They've got a kid named Justin Sienna who's rushed for 1,400 yards. I heard one coach call him a 200-pound bowling ball who rolls very hard. How does Alvarez step up to stop that kind of rushing attack?
Well, I think their defense all year has stepped up to the task. I mean, this is a team that's allowed 2 touchdowns or less in 6 of their 10 games this year, and they've done a pretty good job of stopping a run, as we witnessed last week against Monterey.
Okay. Well, let's hear what defensive lineman Kendrick Brown has in store for this Friday.
Kendrick, before the season started, you told me that you expected to win every game this year. You weren't kidding, were you?
No, we have a lot of good talent, and we play together as a family, and we don't let things get to us. So, yeah.
Does it seem a little surreal, or is it sunk in yet that you guys are 10-0, you're hosting a playoff game on Friday, you're league champs? I mean, or is this something you'll think about when the season's over?
I like to think about it like right now because we're doing good as a team, and we're just doing good. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. You had an older brother that played here. I mean, have you talked to him at all about this? Because he went through some of those lean times.
Yeah, he's just telling me, you guys are doing good, but keep it up.
Do you know much about Friday's playoff opponent, Monta Vista Cupertino?
They're a great team. They're fast, physical. It should be a good game.
You mentioned something they do to dive or something like that?
Yeah, with their running back.
Okay, yeah.
Option.
Yeah. You know, for years this school has kind of struggled in sports, but something's changed this year. Not only just with the football team, with the volleyball team, with the cross-country team, but specifically for the football team. What's different about this year versus last year, other than that instead of 0-10, you're 10-0?
We're a family. We do everything together. We don't let anything get in between us, so we just play good.
And you sensed this even before the year started, or is this something maybe you sensed at the end of last year?
I sensed this at the end of last year because everybody was family. JV family was good. The rest of the varsity was gonna be good, so I knew it was gonna be good.
Yeah, and you're a big guy, 6'2", 290. You said.
Yeah.
You play both sides of the ball. Do you have a preference?
I'd rather play defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, before we get out of here, have you ever wondered what it would be like practicing on Thanksgiving? Because that's what's going to happen if you guys win on Friday.
It's gonna feel good, but I mean, everything has to come at a price. So.
All right, Kendrick, thanks.
John, Alvarez's defense has stepped up before the season.
Yeah, and I think we saw that last week in their season finale. I mean, they forced 4 turnovers against a Monterey program who hadn't fumbled the ball in the last 4 games. In fact, Monterey came into that game having forced 22 turnovers in their last 5 games, and then they were victimized by the turnovers themselves.
Okay. Let's move on now to the Open Division, and that's where Palma has the number 4 seed, I believe, and they're going to take on Mitty from San Jose, who's the number 5 seed. Going into last weekend of the season, it looked like Mitty was going to be the number 1 seed, but then ran into a powerhouse in Sarah.
Boy, the way things changed, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they were on their way, perhaps, as you mentioned, to being the number 1 seed, and they dropped all the way to number 5 seed after that one loss. This is a team that's had won 9 straight games following prior to losing to Sarah. Palma, on the other hand, remember, people were writing them off 3 weeks into the season when they got off that 0-3 start for the first time in 35-plus years. Because this has been Brandon Oliveros all year. The kid has already set a single-season and school rushing record for Palma. He's got over 1,500 yards right now, and they're just going to ride him to the end.
So do you expect a really physical football game out there, right?
I do, and you know, the thing about the West Catholic Athletic League is they are a physical league. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a 2-8 team in the playoffs this year, which is a whole nother story.
St. Ignatius.
But I like the way Palma's playing. I like the way the offensive line is playing right now. I mean, they're moving people, they're controlling the game, they're controlling the line of scrimmage, and that's how Palma's winning games right now. Because if you look at their results, they've only blown out a couple of teams.
Now, Palma is a team that won't back down from Mitty, whereas I assume like a lot of teams look at the West Catholic League and say, oh man, this is Darth Vader and the Death Star. But Palma seems to relish these kind of challenges.
They do, although they've struggled over the years now in the Open Division. In fact, ironically, they're 2-0 in the playoffs against Mitty, and they beat them in 2002 for the CCS title and came back and beat them again in 2006. Since then, they've lost 6 of their last 7 Open Division playoff games.
Ooh. So it'd be nice to break that string there, huh?
Well, it is at home, or at Rabobank Field, so.
Okay. Now moving on to Well, let's move back to Division One, where Salinas is going to take on Piedmont Hills. Salinas snapped their losing streak this week to get into the playoffs.
They did, and we talked about how maybe a bye was good for them, and it certainly was. In fact, they put up their most points of the season against Alisal, and I know 36 doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a team that likes to grind the ball and rely on their defense. They're going to be facing Anthony McBride, the quarterback of Piedmont Hills. They've faced him before last year. Kid threw 5 touchdown passes against them, but Piedmont Hills lost that game by 25 points.
Wow. And McBride has been putting up some big numbers this year, too. And I was going through their scores. They've been averaging 39 points a game, with their lowest output 20 points a game. So, challenge for Salinas defense?
I think so, and I think this is maybe a little more experienced Piedmont Hills team than what they saw last year in the season opener when they put 59 points up against them. This could be a shootout, though. I think if Salinas, though, I think their objective would probably to give the ball a lot to Jordan Torres and Elijah Kirkland, run behind that big offensive line and trying to keep McBride off the field.
Okay. Then we go to Division II, where North Salinas got in, and they're going to face a traditional power in Los Gatos.
Yeah, this is a program with 12 CCS titles over the last 35 years and 50 postseason wins. And once upon a time, the home of Trent Edwards.
Well, that's right. And Butch Catalico stepped down this past season after 26 years there. He oversaw most of the success. Now, Los Gatos started the year off rough. They lost to Mitty, and they got off to an 0-2 start and then strung together a 7-1 finish. They've got a kid named Joey Ward, rushed for over 1,000 yards. The last 7 games, they put up over 40 points a game. Again, North Salinas, though, can put up some points on their own,
It's
right?
very similar to what you're talking about, because North Salinas started the year 0-2, and they've
Right.
gone 7-1 in their last 8 games. You know, the Vikings haven't gotten a lot of attention this year. It's been a quiet 7-3,
Yeah.
but this is a sleeper team in the postseason. Justin Gutierrez has gotten better every week at quarterback, coming off a game where he accounted for 4 touchdown passes and a touchdown run in that 56-point win over Gilroy last week, which they needed to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, so do you see a high-scoring affair, you think, up at Los Gatos?
I do. If North Salinas, I expect them to be able to move the ball. I think they'd like to control a little bit more on the ground, and they have played good defense of late, but both teams putting up a lot of points the last month of the season.
Yeah. Moving now to Division IV, Carmel is going to be hosting Scotts Valley in a game at Pacific Grove. Carmel coming off a game where they put 40 points on the board against PG in the shoe game.
You know, it's funny, Carmel's first ever postseason win came under the Golden Anderson era, and it was against Scotts Valley 5 years ago. And if you believe in omens, if they win that game, they went on to win the CCS title that year.
That's right. Okay. Scotts Valley, the number 2 team out of the Santa Cruz Athletic League. But one score that stuck out to me was Aptos routing them 49-0. And Aptos is a darn good team, though.
Well, they're high seed in Division III right now as well. You know, I know what Carmel's got right now, you know, in terms of the momentum. You know, they're 10-0 right now for the 3rd time in 5 years. They're coming off an emotional win over Pacific Grove.
Right.
They were tested in that game. That's something that hasn't happened all season, with the exception of the opener against Palma, where they prevailed 20-10. I think Carmel's playing on all cylinders right now. I am a little concerned about their defense. They have given up points in the last 2 games, 34 to Soledad and 35 to Pacific Grove.
I thought that, you know, you're absolutely right. I thought that the Carmel defense looked a lot better in the 4th quarter, though, when they didn't give up any points to PG. We're really pressuring them and taking them out of their rhythm.
That's true, and I'll tell you, actually, what really impressed me in that game more than anything was the final 5:45 of that game, where Carmel was able to control the ball by running it with Holden Smith and Connor Martin. And, you know, we look at them as a pass-happy team, but they ran out the final 5 minutes and 45 seconds of that clock, and to keep Pacific Grove even have a chance to win that game.
Yeah. Speaking of Pacific Grove, they travel up to Morgan Hill, where they take on Live Oak, which finished 9-1. And Live Oak has a pretty impressive running back, don't they?
Yes, Trevor Bearden has rushed for over 2,500 yards this year. And you know, it's funny, I've been hearing all week about this was a good seed for Pacific Grove, that Live Oak's probably one of the more overrated teams in the section, because a lot of people are suggesting that they played a soft schedule and went in the league up north, which slips my mind right now.
It's the Mount Hamilton, it's the Blossom Valley League, and
Right.
I'm not sure which team.
But they do have one loss, and that was to Christopher, and they got beat pretty good, 28-8. But you know, that was back in week 2 of the season. That's 8 weeks later. I think this is a good program, and in Pacific Grove, you know, I like how Pacific Grove is playing right now. But this is not one of those games they're just going to walk in there and win.
Where is Pacific Grove emotionally right now, coming off that disappointing loss to Carmel?
I'm sure they're a little bit down, but the playoffs are a brand new season. You got to look past that. And plus, there's an opportunity now, and we've been talking about this for 2 weeks, that if Pacific Grove and Carmel win, they will play again next week. That, to me, should serve as incentive enough.
I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, but where would they play?
Probably at Monterey Peninsula College, and if that didn't work, Golden Anderson told me he'd take Rabobank Stadium.
Okay.
But it won't be at Pacific
that'll be
Grove.
Interesting. Wow. Go all the way out to Salinas for that game.
Well, the hope would be at MPC.
Right.
But, I mean, it depends on if there's another game there, perhaps.
Now, Monterey, also in Division 4, they make a road trip. They, as you mentioned, they go up to Redwood City to take on Menlo, a team that they have a very hot quarterback, but he missed last week with an injury.
He's missed the last week and a half, actually. I mean, he's got 9 games under his belt, but he's only played 8 games. And
8 full games.
8 full games, correct. This guy's impressive. I mean,
And that's
nearly,
Jack Hennigan.
yes, also a very good baseball pitcher. But almost 3,000 passing yards, 37 touchdowns. Again, we're talking about 8.5 games. If he's available, Monterey could be in trouble.
Menlo was finished 3rd in their league. They were 6-4, but as John said, very impressive numbers from this quarterback, and they lost 3 of their last 4 games.
It's a little misleading, though. Again, losing this guy for the second half of the Week 9 game, and then in Week 10 he didn't play at all against Sacred Heart Prep, who's the top seed in Division 4. And they only Menlo's defense isn't bad. I mean, they gave up 1 touchdown to Sacred Heart Prep last week.
Their other loss was to Terra Nova, which is a
10-0.
10-0, and
Top
they're the
seed
top seed in the
division,
open
right,
division,
yeah.
right. And then I saw an interesting score. They played a team from Texas and lost 84-49. Basketball score. We mentioned Sacred Heart Prep. They're going to be playing host to Seaside on Saturday. Seaside, very up and down season.
The mystery team.
Right. Did they go in there and pull the upset, you think?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at Seaside and you see them playing on all cylinders as we did against Salinas High and then last week against Monte Vista Christian, they're world beaters. It's just a question of which Seaside team is going to show up this week. Now, I don't think Ronnie Turner will be back. He's still out with a concussion, but this team seemed to rebound without him and, almost come together as a team and play really well last week against Monte Vista.
In a game they needed to win to get in.
They had to win that game against a program and a team that has given them a lot of trouble over the last 4 or 5 years. In fact, beat them just 2 years ago. So that was a good win for them.
All right. So if we get it's going to take 2 upsets, but we could get a rematch of the Battle of the Bay as well.
And that would not surprise me, which is why we talked earlier about I don't know where that potential Pacific Grove Carmel game could be, because if Monterey and Seaside were to win, they would play again, and that likely would be at MPC.
That'll be pretty interesting. Okay, that'll do it for this week's playoff matchups.
The Monterey County Herald, news at your fingertips 24/7. With the Herald newspaper, website, and mobile apps, you get local, national, and international news, photos, and video. Local news written by local journalists from the largest news outlet in Monterey County. Breaking news online or directly on your mobile device, including up-to-the-minute weather. The Monterey County Herald is more than talking heads and sound bites. It's award-winning journalism at your fingertips 24/7.
Welcome back to Prep Nation. I'm alongside Tommy Wright, who covers the JC and CSUMB sports for us at the Herald. Tommy, start with JC football, and Hartnell's heading for a bowl.
Yeah, Hartnell had an impressive win over MPC. They were really firing on all cylinders in that game. This is the 3rd straight year where the Coast Conference has come down to that game between MPC and Hartnell. And this was the first one over at Rabobank Stadium, but Hartnell really came out on fire and they just didn't let up. The offense and the defense were really just kept going. The first half, MPC couldn't really move the ball at all. Well, meanwhile, for Hartnell, DeAndre Mann just kept pushing it down their throats over and over again. He ended up with 208 yards on 21 carries for 3 touchdowns. He also had 4 catches for 50 yards. But the offense, it wasn't really just the rushing. Kurt Seraldi had a pretty big game too. He went 16-24 for 262 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. To me, that's really been the biggest part of his game that's improved is the interceptions. They're really doing a good job at limiting the turnovers late in the season. And that's really going to play huge in this bowl game.
Now, is his coming on, has that opened things up more for Mann? I mean, Mann's put up impressive numbers all year, but you would think the defenses would be more focused on him as the season went along.
Yeah, when I talked to Mann this weekend, he said that Kurt Ciraldi has been the unsung hero of that offense. He said that that's definitely been the case where the passing game has made teams have to be honest and where they can't just stack the box and wait for DeAndre Mann to run it.
Okay.
So that's definitely been a big part of Mann's season as things have progressed. I think Kurt Ciraldi's really opened things up for him there.
Okay. Do you think the other thing that occurred to me was Hartnell super motivated coming off of last season where they went into the game against MPC with the title on the line as the heavy favorite and then got upset by MPC?
Yeah, Coach Matt Collins tried to downplay it a little bit, although I eventually got him to say, yeah, it was a little bit of a factor. But when I talked to some of the players, they definitely, that rivalry built up more and more. And when I talked to Kurt Ciraldi, he said, yeah, it felt great to be a part of that Hartnell team and to get that revenge after the loss last year really left a bitter taste in their mouth. DeAndre Mann, who's from Miami, he's a Florida kid, but he said it was nice to jump into that rivalry, even though, he hadn't really experienced it otherwise. So I do think that played a role, but it ultimately just came down to Hartnell was the better team there.
Now, were there any highlights for MPC?
Yeah, MPC had some highlights. James Lovato came in substituting for starting quarterback Andrew Ludenbach. Always Ludenbach quarterbacks, kind of a little bit of rhyming there. I guess he was born to be a quarterback, but the starter got hurt a couple weeks back against Cabrillo. He was able to come back in and start, but when I talked to Coach Rasmussen, he said that he was planning on playing both guys either way, and Lovato came in, he was solid after Ludenbach struggled a little bit. He threw a few interceptions, but Lovato went 7 of 10 for 66 yards. He was finding Joseph Jacobowski, the Seaside alum, a lot.
Oh, okay.
Jacobowski had 51 yards on 3 catches. The defense, while at first they had some trouble stopping Hartnell, eventually they were able to slow him down a bit. Rufino Calderon, the North County alum, he had 10 tackles, a sack, and a fumble recovery. Joseph Griffin had 4 sacks for MPC, so there were a few highlights there. I think injuries have kind of slowed down MPC really the whole year, but that did play a little bit of a part in this game. I'm sure he talked to them. They're not going to use that as an excuse, but they had some injuries on the line. Ludenbach, I don't think, was quite 100%.
Yeah.
He wasn't quite moving the way he was earlier in the season. So that did play a role, but Hartnell was the better team. Hartnell, their defense, too, was really shutting down MPC early on, and some later. MPC only got a touchdown late in the fourth quarter after Hartnell gave them a safety. They snapped it out of the end zone intentionally.
Oh,
that was
okay.
the only other 2 points they scored there. But Matt Snead had 3 sacks for Hartnell. Neas Martin had a couple interceptions. So they were really firing on all cylinders.
Well, let's talk about Hartnell's bowl game. They face a familiar opponent, don't they?
Yeah, they faced Contra Costa College earlier in the year. They edged them by 3 points. The two teams actually played last year as well, where they edged them by 3 points. Okay. That one was in overtime, but so they're pretty evenly matched. They're both probably run first, although they both do have some quarterbacks that can throw the ball. For Hartnell, it's obviously DeAndre Mann. He's the leading rusher in the state right now. Mm-hmm. He leads the state in touchdowns as well, which is a school record for MPC, both for the season and for the career.
Okay.
And he's going to be looking at a few more records coming into this final game. He's has a shot at the career rushing record and the single season rushing record for Hartnell. So those would be a couple things to look out for. But on the other side, we have Contra Costa with this kid, Devontae Sapp Lynch. This is Marshawn Lynch's little brother.
Okay.
Yeah, they call him Little Beast Mode. Beast Mode 2.
Okay.
But he's had a great season as well. He's number 4 in the state in rushing yards. He has 1,239 rushing yards, 17 touchdowns, which 17 is a lot fewer than DeAndre Mann's 25 on the ground, but that's actually 3rd in the state. Mann is way up there above everybody else. So, but Lynch he's been a really good running back. Last year when Hartnell faced them, he hadn't played as big of a role. And then come the MPC game, MPC and Contra Costa played in the Living Breath Bowl last year.
Oh, right. Okay.
After MPC upset them. He didn't have quite a big game either there, but he really showed his potential as my first chance at seeing him. He broke off an 84-yard kickoff return.
Oh, okay.
So he definitely has some breakaway speed, and he can break some tackles as well. The kid has some talent, but so that's probably going to be the main focus is watching that running back battle. Hartnell has been able to shut him down. Yeah, Sapp Lynch had his worst game this season against Hartnell. They held him to only 41 yards on 15 carries, 1 touchdown. He only had one other game where he didn't break 100 yards this year. But it was interesting to note quarterback Malik Watson did step up in that game for Contra Costa. He went 27 of 42 for 293 yards and 4 touchdowns while only throwing 1 interception. But another interesting thing to note there is Hartnell was able to get pressure on him. They got 3 sacks, whereas this guy's only been sacked 7 times all year. So that's going to be an interesting battle there.
Okay. Moving on now, the CSUMB basketball, the women's team looks like it's having the same kind of success they've had in the past. They're off to a 3-0 start.
Yeah, and actually looking back at the past, they kind of had a couple old school wins over the weekend where it was the defense that got it done as opposed to that first game where they scored a school record amount of points and just really went wild on offense.
Yeah.
They're showing that they can win some games playing defense first too, playing that old Renee Jimenez philosophy as opposed to... And I'm sure when I was reading some quotes from Carrie Nakamoto, she said that they are going to play some good defense too. It's not all going to necessarily be run and gun. But this was the 3rd fewest points in consecutive games allowed in school history, 83 points in the two wins they had over Southwestern Minnesota State and Notre Dame Dinamore in the Lady Argo Classic over the weekend.
Okay.
But they did have some people getting it done on offense. Chesley Self scored 12 points against Notre Dame. Michaela Harris had 16 against Southwest Minnesota. So what's interesting to note is so we have 2 different players leading the team in scoring there. We had another player in the first game, so they have a lot of scoring options there.
Okay, yeah. So they must be feeling pretty confident. Now, they're off until December 6th when they open the league play. But I assume they're feeling pretty confident heading into league play.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of practice there. I think this is probably an opportunity for this team to gel a little bit more. There are a lot of new players coming together with some good returning players as well, and I imagine Nakamoto's still kind of trying to drill her philosophy there and some of her strategies.
But it makes it easier for her when she's 3-0 as opposed to...
Oh, definitely. I imagine kids are buying into that, with 3 impressive victories to start off the season heading into conference play.
Now the JC men's basketball game has started as well. How are MPC and Hartnell doing?
MPC's off to a decent start. They're 2-3. They had a win and a loss over this past week. They put up a big point number. They had 107 points in a win, 107-96 over Kenyatta.
Oh.
So they showed that offense can get going, but then they fell to Bakersfield 63-62. There's a couple kids to mention. Caleb Wood and Donovan Solvent led the team with 10 points in the loss. Well, Caleb Wood had 14 points in the win, and Devin Copeland scored 24 there.
Okay.
As for Hartnell, they're off to an 0-2 start, but we definitely have someone to note. Kyle Vasher, the Salinas High alumnus, he's averaging 23 points a game, as well as 11.5 rebounds a game.
Wow.
So averaging a double-double early in the season.
Okay, great. And that's it for Prep Nation this week. Make sure and join us again next week. Thanks.